Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, August 4th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 26 days, the game against Michigan in 117 days. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at gratefulgriddleoh.com. Buckeyes have their first 3 practices of fall camp in the books. We got to be there for all of them. We have a ton of coverage of all of that. Photos, videos, practice reports, all that, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. You can find it all on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus, as well as some coverage on the front page there as well. So lots to talk about there. Plenty of coverage over the weekend, including some live shows on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. So if you want, you can get caught up on all of that. Today, you're going to get a chance to hear from Ohio State defensive coordinator Matt Patricia. He has become something of a favorite among the Ohio State media. Lots of interesting stuff to say, some, sort of honest and candid impressions, very positive person as well. So very interesting to hear from him on Friday last week. And now you're going to get a chance to hear directly from Matt Patricia on a whole bunch of different topics. It's going to be a little longer than our traditional morning shows. That's okay. There's a lot to talk about. So this is, again, after the second practice of the spring. We have now had 3 practices, did not get a chance to talk to anyone after Saturday's practice. So you're going to hear him talk sort of in the future tense about putting on pads for Saturday's practice. So that is now in the past tense, but this is the last time we get a chance to talk to someone. So I'm going to let you hear from him. So here's Matt Patricia's first impressions this fall, just where he is with install and everything else 2 practices in.
Yeah, it was great last couple weeks of the summer program, the OTAs. We kind of got a head start, so we were able to go through some of the install preview so that when we came out today, yesterday and today, that they're kind of familiar with some of that stuff. So their communication's been good. We had a couple yesterday, and you always a little bit different when you go against the offense and things are moving faster pace. To be able to see some of the unique formations and some of the motions and stuff, we need as much of that as possible to get all of our communication down. But it was good. It'll pick up here as we go. We're kind of just focusing on some early down stuff. As we get to more situational football, third down red area, that communication is really going to be tested. So, we'll see what happens here in the next couple of days coming up with it.
This is something that we've heard Ryan Day talk about, something we've heard Brian Hartline talk about as they've sort of seen their roles change over the years within the program. How do you figure out where you're going to be during the day, during practice, which position groups you're going to be watching, all that, when you're the defensive coordinator and not necessarily tethered to just one position group?
That's a great question. As a young coach one time, talking to Mike Tomlin, and he said one of the hardest things to transition from a position coach to a coordinator and then a head coach is really kind of mapping out where you go during practice. You want to have a plan. So I always kind of took that advice, and I look at the practice schedule. I looked at the script. Who's working on what fundamentals. A lot of times that has to do with what we did the day before. So I'm looking for some improvement and some different points of emphasis there. And then I know that sometimes when I go to an individual drill, it's going to intensify a little bit if I'm there. So I'm always looking at the schedule and what we need to work on that day, and then I'll map out what periods I go where.
One of the hot topics on defense is Caleb Downs, obviously one of, if not the best defensive players in the entire nation. Buckeyes have him at safety, but how much does he impact what Matt Patricia is going to do with maybe some of the other guys who are at safety? And how does the play of the other guys potentially open up things for Caleb Downs to be able to do some different things?
Yeah, really good question as far as when you have depth in a room, how do you utilize all the players that are in it so you can get them all on the field? And I think creating jobs for guys in that, sense is really important to kind of give them an opportunity to go learn and put themselves on the field. Caleb is such a versatile player that now you can do that. You can move them into some different spots to give those other guys a chance to get on the field in those roles. So I feel like that room is really working. I feel like there's some good young guys there that have opportunity to kind of, step up and contribute. So having that piece and moving that around is good for us to be able to evaluate those guys to see if we can, through the course of the season do that.
One thing that we've seen a lot of, and probably more than we were expecting during those first 3 practices, was Caleb Downs playing at the nickel spot. He traditionally was more of a deep safety or sometimes a box safety. Then he has been working at the nickel role quite a bit during the first 3 practices. So What does he bring to that spot?
Yeah, I think his ability to kind of play, whether it's nickel or safety, or maybe he's just lined up in some different, areas, it's just his communication. He's such a good communicator, just to kind of let everybody know we have words that settle everything down. Even though I may be lined up in something that may look like a certain position, it may not be that position, but the communication tells everybody what it is, and that's critical. Otherwise, everyone's kind of like, where are we going and how does this all fit? So his ability to do that is really kind of what makes that go.
One of the new faces this fall is North Carolina transfer defensive end Beau Atkinson. He was not in for spring. He went through spring ball with Bill Belichick down in Chapel Hill, then transferred to the Buckeyes after that. So he's gotten a few practices in now under his belt with Matt Patricia. So where does Patricia think they could use him as compared to someone like Kenyatta Jackson or CJ Hicks or some of the other guys they've got at those positions?
Yeah, I mean, you can never have enough pass rush. I think that's, always a great theory as a defensive coach, and certainly the best coverage is pass rush. We want to get there as much as we can. So those guys have some position flex too. They can move into different alignments, and I think the more of those guys you can get on the field, the faster you can become in the pass rush game. Certainly down and distance and situation will dictate some of that, but I think just having players like that can go inside, outside, maybe line up in some different alignments, really make every offensive lineman that we play against prepare for you. That's, I think, always harder during the course of the week of a game week, rather than you're always in one spot all the time. It just kind of depends on each player, but we have some versatility there.
Coming out of the spring, the interior of the defensive line was one of, if not the biggest question marks on the team. Where do things stand right now with the interior of the defensive line? Remember, Eddrick Houston suffered a knee injury during the first practice of the fall, and he is expected to be back relatively soon. He's been moving around already better on Friday's practice and then Saturday's practice again. So it doesn't seem like that's a long-term thing, but where are things right now, and how has Matt Patricia seen things progress there? So again, this was after practice 2. You're going to hear him sort of in this answer looking ahead to practice 3, which happened on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the spring and then really the summer. I think the summer those guys had a different mindset to come in and work, and with Coach Mick, really push their bodies, really work on getting stronger, being able to, use the leverage that they have, and that's what we're looking for now. It's hard without pads on to kind of get a judge on all that. We'll get a good look at it as we put them on tomorrow, but I think they really understand, like, hey, it's time to go. It's your time to get out there. It's, those older guys aren't here anymore, and we've got to have a different mindset about that. We've got to have a mindset where this is my job, I got to go earn a job, or I have to have this position, or the team needs me here and I got to, really do a good job of playing this role. So I think that pressure is on them. I think they feel it. I think, Coach Johnson's the best there is. So he's got them going in the direction we need them to, and we need to see that tomorrow when we put the pads on.
Mentioned the injury to Eddrick Houston that happened on Thursday, but a lot like the offensive line and that virus that was going to the room last year, sometimes guys missing practice time can represent an opportunity for other people. So what has Matt Patricia seen from the young guys potentially getting an opportunity to get more snaps with the ones without Eddrick Houston out there the last couple practices?
Yeah, no, we just kind of keep, going forward. I think we have some young guys out there that need those reps, and it's really good to see, Taiwan or, J-Mo, those guys get out there and get that opportunity to go out. K-Mac, obviously, will be in the middle there too, and Will. So we have some really good players there, and, Eddrick will get out there as soon as he can, but right now it's opportunity for other guys to go out and show us what they can do.
The last couple of years, it felt like after 3 seasons, we had a pretty good sense for what it meant to have a Jim Knowles defense at Ohio State. So now that Jim Knowles is off at Penn State and Matt Patricia has replaced him as the DC for the Buckeyes, what could we expect to maybe be a little bit different about a Matt Patricia defense this year compared to some of the previous seasons?
Yeah, it's a really great question. Obviously not, firsthand being in the building last year. But look, we have great coaches that are here, that were here last year. And I think it's my job to really kind of make sure I'm adapting and learning to what, we did really well last year, because obviously it was great. And we have great coaches that coach, these guys really well and develop these players at a high level. So I think from that standpoint, there'll be some things that are very similar to what everybody's used to. I maybe teach a little bit differently. That's probably the only, I can't really speak on it. I just teach the way that I do. It's more conceptually and big picture and things like that, which gives us a little bit more position flex and multiplicity from that standpoint to put guys in different roles. So
Matt Patricia's background is almost entirely in the NFL. He has been a college coach in the past, but it has been about 20 years. So in the NFL, it's a lot more matchups. You're looking at matchups rather than maybe sort of just overall scheme stuff. So does that carry over here to college?
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest lesson I learned, I think, when I went to the NFL from college, was just how much it was to me. I used to say it was more like the NBA than it was anything else. Matchups and all that stuff was really important. That's definitely important. If you're going to go play against JJ, you better know where he's lined up every single play. So some of that still carries over. But right now for us, it's just about how do we improve fundamentally? How do we get a lot of young players? We lost a lot of really experienced veteran leadership guys last year that are, in training camps right now. So how do we get these young guys who are super talented up to speed, get them the reps they need so they have that game-like experience?
One thing you notice when you see Matt Patricia out on the practice field, when he's around you, he's smiling a lot. He's a lot of hugging, a lot of sort of embracing, a lot of very strong relationships, it feels like, being built there. And that's true when he's off on the other side of the practice field, and it's not just for show. It's really, that just seems like how he is. Is that an intentional thing for him at the college level because of the way the relationships are with college players, or is that different from the NFL? What's the deal with all the hugging and all those strong relationships that seem to be getting formed? No,
it certainly does. I mean, I have great friends and relationships and players that I've coached in the NFL, and we have great guys here. The players here they're just great young men, so you can't help but gravitate to them. And as a coach, that's my role, right? I want to mentor and coach and help develop young men, 18 to 22-year-old men in those stages of not only football but life. So it's a true joy for me just to be around them. They have that energy, they have that youthfulness about them. They're very into the game of football, which I love, so they want to learn. I love to teach it, and just being able to be in that situation where I can help them outside of the game is really important to me. I think I've said to a lot of them, look, I have kids now that look up to them, so it's my job to be able to do everything I can to help them be the best versions of themselves. So that's what, my kids are looking up to.
Patricia joined the Buckeyes after last year's national championship team, so he was still relatively new at the start of spring ball this spring. So how different are things now compared to coming into and then coming out of the spring game, and then when he got into the building in February, in terms of trust, relationships, how much have things grown since then for him?
I mean, I think you're always trying to develop the relationships and earn everybody's trust. I think it's really important that, I earn their trust. I think they need to understand that I'm here to try to help them be the best version of themselves that they can be. And honestly, they're helping me with a lot too. It's great to be able to lean on those guys and ask questions, and, they're telling me, really good information. So I just think that relationship is what we're continually building, and it's a process, and it'll be different now than it is, August to September to, December and forward. So that's the great part about the game. And, I told him the other day, we were talking about relationships and how important they are. And, it's one of the biggest things I think you miss when this game ends, and why a lot of people get into coaching and always want to be around the game is the games are great, the wins are great, the championships are all great, but you miss the locker room, you miss the camaraderie, you miss the friendship, you miss that time together. It's something that I just think is unique to this sport.
Mentioned earlier that Patricia has a long background in the NFL and not so much in college. He took last season off, spent a lot of time watching NFL, but also watching college. How much time has he actually spent watching and studying college football to get used to the adjustments that you have to make going from the NFL to college?
Yeah, a lot, watching a lot of film, and really started that process last year, with kind of a unique year for me last year. I watched a lot of NFL and a lot of college tape just for that reason. I think even if you're in the NFL, the matriculation of the players coming in, the game has changed. There is a lot more influence. There always is college influence in the NFL. And look, you're trying to play to the strengths of the guys that you get in the NFL, and they're coming from college. So what do they do well? And you want to study that. But being in this environment, obviously, we're watching that all the time, and we're taking a look at the tape of what is trending, what is, what do you have to be ready for? The biggest thing for me is really the differences, right? I think that's one of the biggest keys for me to study and make sure that I'm paying attention to the hash marks, just simple things like that, but formationally, some of the rules that are different. And then, you take the rules and then you coach from the rules. So how are we coaching everything and making sure that it matches up with how it's going to be officiated on the field?
When you ask guys who are moving from one level to another what the differences are in terms of rules and alignment, one of the first things you're going to hear from everyone is the hash marks. In the college, the hash marks are much wider than they are, further spread apart than they are in the NFL. So in the NFL, there's not really that wide a wide side of the field, and there's not short a boundary side of the field. In college, there's a big difference. Is that the biggest difference between college and the pros?
That is a big one. It is a really big one. There's some formation and things that are a little bit different too, I would say, because of the hash marks, but, being able to have some of those unbalanced looks and some of those unique sort of formations, I think are just different. And then just, whether it's the nuances in the rules, right, where we're allowed to jam and reroute and where we can't is a little bit different. I'm a little bit excited about what we can do. So those are the main ones.
Patricia has been a very optimistic person ever since he got to Ohio State. What has he liked so far in camp for the Buckeyes?
I like our guys are really doing a great job with the installations. We're going pretty quick, so they're coming in and they're pretty large, but I think our guys are handling that information on the field. And really one of the things that's been awesome about that is even yesterday, the stuff that we put in, we kind of ran a little bit of that today, made a couple tweaks, and those corrections were, handled really well today. So that to me is a sign of a smart team that can handle those adjustments, can be able to make those changes, which is what we're going to need to do during a game. So that's really encouraging. I thought yesterday we flew around really well. We attacked the ball well. We got some turnovers there. I know that when that happens, the next day the offense is gonna, it's gonna tighten down. You may not get the same effect, but I still felt like we were attacking the ball that way.
Mentioned earlier the different stuff you can do with Caleb Downs at safety. A lot of that's going to depend on the other guys at safety. Jalen McClain, Malik Hartford, maybe Leroy Roker. What do those guys need to do to be able to keep up with Caleb Downs and allow Ohio State to be flexible at the safety position?
Yeah, biggest thing for them is just every single day to improve, and so we'll mark out things, certainly like communication. That is the biggest thing when you're a safety and you're playing in the middle of the defense. You have to be able to communicate to both sides. You have to be able to communicate to the linebackers. You have to tie in all of that coverage stuff together, and then with the motions and the formations. And I think for them, with that communication, the hardest thing is just getting the game to slow down, as things start to move. That comes with game reps. We don't have game reps before we get to game one, so we're going to have to get it in practice the best we can.
One thing that might make it interesting to have Caleb Downs play a third spot, or like the nickel role, as opposed to just being the boundary guy or the field guy or the deep guy or the box guy, however they want to sort of delineate that year, is that if he's going to be playing out there with just Malik Hartford, well, that means he's probably going to be the box guy. He's probably going to be the boundary guy, probably going to be playing closer to the line of scrimmage. If he's out there with Jalen McClain, McClain might be that guy, and Caleb Downs might be the deep guy or the field guy. So how do you avoid being predictable with Caleb Downs being out there with one of those guys or the other?
Yeah, absolutely. Self-scout is really important there, but I think that, they are well-rounded players. They all can do some things that be in different positions and be in different alignments and still be productive. So making sure that we're conscious of that and continually moving them around because we don't want to just be in one situation where you always know what it looks like.
In terms of the adjustments from the pros to the college level, I mentioned earlier the hash marks and some of the other alignment kind of things. One of the things, though, that is a big difference is Ohio State, the first time they're out on the field with another team lined up on the other side of the ball from them, that's going to be one of the biggest games of the year against Texas. No preseason games like there are in the NFL, and that's going to take some getting used to for Matt Patricia as well.
Yeah, I never really appreciated those preseason games in the NFL, but right now I'm wishing we had one. I think, we would say it all the time, like everybody needs preseason, everyone needs training camp, and certainly game day operation I think is one that is really important, and I thought that was great to be able to do that in the NFL. We got to hit the ground running when we get to week one and make sure that as a coaching staff, we're on point. We have good communication, whether it's from upstairs to downstairs, being able to see what's on the field, even just simple things like substitutions and packages going in and out and people being in the right spot. So we have to simulate that as we go through training camp to make sure, our guys are great. They've done it before. It's probably more me nervous than anything. I'm the one that's got to adjust and change. So I think they'll be fine. I'll be the one that'll be trying to figure it out.
Mentioned earlier some of the stuff that Matt Patricia studied last year as he was sort of taking a sabbatical year between his last pro job and now taking the defensive coordinator job at Ohio State. What did he learn during that year off that made him decide he was going to come back to college after nearly 20 years?
For me, I think last year, a couple things. One, it was really going back to I got into coaching for a reason. You know, I left engineering to get into coaching because I just really wanted to teach and mentor, and how important my coaches were, especially in college. You know, my college coaches were to just growing up, you know, and being a young adult, a young man trying to figure it out. And so it was really a way to kind of give back. I wanted to give back, and I wanted to help people. I just really wanted to help people and teach. Came from that background with my parents and stuff. So I think I had a good opportunity to kind of sit back and be like, hey, I got to get back to just, you know, getting the joy of being a great teacher and a great mentor and those relationships. And so that was a big thing for me. That was really important. And that's what a lot of it drew me back to the college game, to being around, you know, guys of that age, you know, and that be able to have that influence. I will tell you that also last year doing media, I have a much better appreciation for how difficult the job is for all of you in the media to, you know, do what you guys do every single day. Like, that's not natural for me, but, you know, the work that everyone puts into it from the media standpoint, and to get the message out to the fans, right? And to be that connection between the coaches and the team and the fans, and to really also have that football mind, right? Where you're diving into the game and you're taking a look at schematics and scheme, and all of that is to me, that is an incredibly difficult job. And I would say I have a huge appreciation for that.
And the last question about Kenyatta Jackson. He's someone that we have heard a ton about from a whole lot of different people. That's usually a pretty good indication that someone has taken a major step on the field, off the field, or perhaps in Kenyatta Jackson's case, both. So we've heard a lot about him. Is that something that Matt Patricia is seeing as well?
I would echo all of that. I think Kenyatta has just really, from, day one that I walked in the building, stepped forward and said, okay, hey, let me be in front. Let me do the drill first. Let me learn, let me do the lip. Whatever it is, it's like, get me out in the front. Let me go compete. Let me push myself. I think that everyone sees how hard he is pushing himself, and you can't help but gravitate towards that, saying, if this guy is working this hard, man, I got to get my stuff together. I got to go work as hard as he is, because, he is setting the standard as we go forward. And I think everybody feels that.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. We definitely enjoyed hearing from Matt Patricia. Boy, we're going to miss Jim Knowles. Jim Knowles' press conferences were always kind of fun and interesting. Patricia, very much the same. Good personality, a lot of interesting stuff to say. So hope you guys enjoyed that one. We're going to have much more coverage coming for you this week at BuckeyeHuddle.com as the Buckeyes enter week 2 of fall camp and count down the days to the Texas game. Again, we are under 4 weeks to the start of the season, and there's going to be a ton of coverage for you all month long at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Our X's and O's guys are getting sort of ramped up with lots of new coverage previewing the season. We've got lots of recruiting coverage for you there as well, and as well as, of course, team coverage as we count down the days to that Ohio State-Texas game and the start of the 2025 college football season. We hope to see you there at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.